What's up, guys? I'm Laura from Reading in Bed. Today is Thursday, December 22nd, and today I'm going to reveal the 21st and 22nd stories in the short story advent calendar because I missed yesterday. So we've got family staying with us and things are all out of routine and chaotic. And I actually did record this video this morning with the kids, as usual, as we ate breakfast, but I didn't actually hit record, so that's just the kind of couple days we're having. Hopefully we'll be back at it for the last couple of videos, but for today, you're stuck with me. So let's get into it, since we have two stories to catch up on. And first of all, we can talk about story number 20, which was Defamer by Shane Jones. So I thought this name sounded familiar, and I did have this guy's book, Crystal Eaters, on my TBR for quite a while, and it might have fallen off by now, and I can't even remember like how I heard about it, but I knew that Crystal Eaters was supposed to be sort of a, you know, different experimental kind of a book. I think the page numbers are printed backwards in it, for example. So I sort of had that expectation going into this story. And this was a really surreal story. It was about a woman named Birdie whose apartment is constantly falling down around her, in a literal sense, that like her floor crumbles, her ceiling crumbles, and you know, she doesn't think that's odd. It's not odd to her that there's workers in her house all the time, and they decide to move in eventually. She works in an office, and her boss starts working a different job during his lunch hours, and her ex-boyfriend follows her around with a hammer, and every time he sees her, he smashes her phone. And like, all of these incidents are told very matter-of-factly, and so it's weird. Like, it's a weird story. And I get the sense, like, you guys might think by watching these that I don't like surreal or experimental fiction because I often sort of don't like it in these short story forms. That's not true, though. I was trying to think about some of the experimental literature that I do like. The Wake by Paul Kingsnorth is written in sort of a version of Anglo-Saxon English, so that's really weird. Martin John by Anna Kena Schofield, who had a story earlier in the short story advent calendar, is written. You can kind of see the way she uses the page is quite different. There's like diagrams, there's refrains, there's you know, lists and things. So this is also, I would call, sort of experimental in its form. So two very experimental books, but what I realized when I thought about it is that though the language and the form is quite experimental in both of these, really they're both character studies, and both of you know, men who are very isolated and kind of dealing with mental illness and stuff like that. So actually these two books are more similar than I first thought. And in a way, like, they do conform to some conventions, I guess, of what we expect of a novel, in that you get a picture of a character, and a very in-depth one. Whereas with a short story, you just, like, you don't get the chance to get that. There's not enough room. There's not enough time. So that, I think that's why this sort of experimental stuff doesn't resonate with me in short story form, although it really does. I mean, this one, The Wake, was my favorite novel of last year, and this one I just reread, and it's brilliant. So it really works for me in a novel-length kind of work. So anyways, let's move on. Now, obviously, since I'm filming this a second time, I know what the stories are. The seal is broken, so it's just not going to be as magical, but let's do it anyway. So story number 21, we've got kind of a snowflake sort of motif here, and it is Circumstances of Hatred by Laura Trunke. I saw a lot of stuff on social media yesterday praising this quite highly. It's a longer